TestFest, great show. Thank you for putting up this panel. I'm as excited as my fellow panelists are. The next 30 odd minutes, it's going to be some pragmatic insights from the day-to-day experiences that all the quality engineering leaders that I have on the panel would love to share. The topic is what I would say is a timeless, it's a very good topic. Will test automation put manual testing into the shade? I don't want to jump into any conclusions at the beginning of it. But with that said, let me first introduce my panel I have on the table, and then I'll let them talk a couple of minutes about themselves. To start with, I'll welcome Don Haynes. Don is the CEO and for testing Yogini at PerfTestPlus, Chief Executive Officer. I will let Don talk about her. Don, welcome.
Hey there, thank you so much. I really enjoy working with other people who are trying to push the envelope of what's available, but also trying to learn from others, because we don't all need to make the same mistakes over and over again. So I've been in IT for over 35 years, which is weird. I saw minis and mainframes, and I worked on AI and neural net technology when it first came out in the early 90s. Precursor to voice recognition, handwriting recognition, and OCR, and then worked for a test tools company. So that gave me a perspective of working in industry for commercial products, and then moving over to the test tools arena, bringing solutions to folks like yourselves, working on your own projects and your own teams, and facing the same problems and trying to help people be successful. So I was lucky enough to have all that experience, package it up, and become a trainer and consultant. And I've been doing that ever since, and really enjoy joining folks at conferences to chat about what's the challenge of the day and what's the tidbit I can take away from what you all have learned. So we all have something to learn, we all have something to teach, and really appreciate this. Thanks.
Sure. Thank you. Let me move to Melissa, Director of Engineering, mParticle. Melissa, a quick introduction from your side.
Yeah, hi everybody. So I'm Melissa Benua. I've done a lot of roles. I've been in software engineering a little more than 15 years now. I've shipped large-scale back-end services for Microsoft. I worked on Bing and Cortana and Windows Phone and Xbox One, and a lot of different things. I've also been at teeny tiny startups. I've been employee or engineer number 5, teeny tiny startups. I've been at companies kind of in the middle, and I've done obviously a lot of software development. I started my career as a software developer in test. I've done some project management, and now I'm doing engineering management and also leading the dev test SecOps strategy for our engineering group. So I've done worn a lot of hats, but I love quality more than anything else.
All of us do. Thank you, Melissa. Let me move to Eugene. Eugene is Quality Engineering Manager at Wayfair. Can you talk about yourself, Eugene, for a minute for the benefit of the audience?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Sai. So yeah, my name is Evgeny Tkachenko. You can call me Eugene. I've got used to being called Eugene. So I'm the quality engineering manager at Wayfair. I have more than 12 years of engineering experience in test automation and test management. I love sharing my experience with other engineers, so that's why I'm here. I usually participate in key meetups and speak at 3-4 conferences per year. It includes local conferences here in Boston and huge conferences like Star East in Florida. So I also write articles about test automation and test management for international magazines like Test Magazine, Professional Tester, Tech Beacon, Sticky Minds, etc. So, and I'm excited to be here with you today.
Terrific. Thank you, Eugene. And I have Shilpi now. Shilpi is Director of Test Engineering at Canopy, Inc. Over to you, Shilpi.
Hello, everyone. I'm working as Director of Test Engineering at Canopy. So we are a startup working in banking domain. I have experience working in as a QA in every phase of software development lifecycle, may it be feature analysis, requirement analysis, or may it be doing functional, non-functional, security, or all type of testing. So I worked on different type of platforms, different type of domains, and designed test frameworks in variety of languages. I love to explore new things, share my knowledge with my teammates, gather their experience, and get the perspective of things in a wholesome, like pros and cons and different perspectives. And I love to help organization in setting up the QA principle, like what roles and how to process and how to manage things, how to involve QA early and things like that. Prior to Canopy, I worked with Adobe and ThoughtWorks. So ThoughtWorks was my first company that laid off the foundation and QA career for me. So that's pretty much
Great. Well, I'll keep my introduction really short. I drive the global marketing at Innominds, a Silicon Valley headquartered product engineering company, and then we are globally distributed, based out of India as well. We're about 1,300 people serving, the global ISVs and OEMs for the last 18 years, with a lot of distinction in terms of meeting their product engineering, digital engineering needs, full cycle products that includes quality engineering and test automation. Needless to say, without quality, a software cannot go out. So it's as simple as that. And then I have done testing since 1998 to various capacities, companies like Cisco Systems. I was at the CTO's office at Computer Associates, testing a lot of networking software, protocols, identity management, before I started getting into marketing, business development, and strategy. So what goes without telling is quality is the center of whatever I do, and I'm very honored to host you all. Without delay, let me just set some context so that we could get into the topic of today's discussion. We all know, Gartner tells this, applications have to be developed and delivered faster, and then application testing services are extending to new technologies and new methods. Without going much into the statistics around that, I would also quote what Diego from Forrester says. We all look up to Diego, one of the leading analysts at Forrester. He famously says, testing is becoming more and more a first-class citizen, and which is lovely to hear. I continue to look into his insights, particularly as enterprises trying to deliver testing faster and better. It's important that organizations need to continuously reinvent how they're doing, because the era that we are living is about AI-infused applications. Talking about the context, it could mean for the next 5 years, applications would be infused with AI capabilities. I heard Don talking about voice recognition. Today, we are talking about speech learning engines, natural language engines, color sensing applications, and intelligent applications. What it could mean is testing organizations that we all lead up into need to be relooking at the competencies, whether you have understanding of machine learning, do you have an understanding of mathematical modeling, do you have a data scientist to help you out with analysis and analytics. But all the things in one common, applications are getting to learn and they're getting intelligent, but is the testing there? That's number one. But the point is, how do you test those learning components in these AI infused applications for bias, for drift, and for shift? And then if you keep the AI piece away, there's still a whole lot of functionality that needs to be validated. And so let me jump into the topic of today's discussion. Will automation put manual testing into the shade? Well, it's as exciting as what we would want to be. And in that sense, let me open up the discussion. What we would do is we would go around the panel and then have some interesting remarks coming in from all of you. Let me start with Don. What are your thoughts on the areas in modern day software testing where I believe manual testing would still be needed? Any of your experiences would be of help, Don.
Yeah, I have a couple of heuristics about that. And
Sure.
since I started working with automation in the, I'd say mid-90s, and there was always this idea, well, we can just have the tool do that, and we can offload testers, or we don't need testers anymore. It's just it was as silly then as it is now, in my opinion, because it's just a tool. And for what it's worth, I'm in the quality business because I don't actually trust software. So I don't really want software testing my software, because it's only based on algorithms. And just like you said, if there's a learning component to it, so with OCR, that's what I worked with, optical character recognition. When it starts to learn something, it starts to warp its view of other things. Right. And so from time to time, you literally had to throw away all of the learning and start over to get a good result. later on, I worked, when I was at Rational, we bought a test tool company whose main product was, it was an automated tool to scan your entire product, create a library of objects, and test a bunch of stuff for you. You know, test buttons, test input boxes, and we never shipped the thing. Never, because it was never good enough. Now, technology is always going to go, right? It's always going to get better and better and better. But regardless of where it goes, it can't know everything that we know in half a second looking at a screen. It can't know everything that a person who actually uses a system to do a job, it can't know all of those things. It's too complex. It's too overarching. So my rule of thumb with any tool that I'm going to use, and by tool I mean lots of things. So this could be a test tool, it could be an untrained tester, it could be an outsourced person, it could be someone that doesn't know anything. I spot check. So regardless of how I use the tool, which I want to use automation in every way that it can work for me, but it can't do everything I need to do. So I want to check on it after it's done. So spot checking to me is always going to be needed by a human that has the knowledge, the skill, the discernment, and the ability to judge good or not good this time. So that's my
terrific tip. Absolutely, spot checking is the way forward. I completely understand it. It's still very, very relevant. Let me move to Melissa. Melissa, what are your thoughts? Why do you believe modern day software testing is heading, and where do you think manual testing still has a role, or vice versa?
Yeah, so if we break it down, right, there's really two fundamental types of bugs, right? There's bugs of implementation, right? The developer just did the wrong thing in some way or another. And automation for various levels of automation is generally pretty good at catching that, right? That's something that a machine can catch. But then there's bugs in understanding, right? If I misunderstand the requirement,
right,
as a developer, or if the requirements don't match what the customer expected, there is no amount of automation that will save you from that, because you have a fundamental underlying flaw that underpins any automation effort. And so for functional bugs, automation is better to unimpeachable, right? Manual testing is much slower at catching functional bugs. Machines are great at that. For catching bugs and understanding, right? For catching places where you have not built the right thing, you absolutely need a human involved to discover that we have not built the right thing, and to in fact understand what the right thing is to begin with.
Yep. Absolutely. I also believe this, somewhere I read in an MIT paper, artificial intelligence is nothing but useful if it is not assistive. It has to be assistive as well. So humans control machines in that sense, and machines come to the aid of us to make things better. Let me move to Eugene. What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, that's a good topic, actually. I will talk a little bit. So I will talk about the manual testing role a little bit. So first and foremost, I wanted to mention that, I try to avoid using this term manual testing, because, there is no manual testing. There is just testing, right? So there is a great article, The End of Manual Testing, by Michael Bolton, in which he noted, when we speak of manual testing, we help to damage the craft. There is no manual testing. There is testing. No one speaks of manual designers, manual programmers, manual managers. They all do this brain-centered work, and they all use tools. So bear with me, I'm going to use these air quotes when I'm using this manual testing term in speech. Okay, so yeah, let's get back to this main question. Manual testing, or just testing, is needed everywhere. Test automation is not a silver bullet at all. So we still need exploratory testing, user acceptance testing, usability testing, requirements testing, etc. So a different question is whether we need a separate role for people in charge of these areas. And the answer is, you will not like it, it depends. It depends on the type of the project you're working on, processes, methodologies you follow. So When it comes to agile testing, I'm a big fan of this whole team approach in which the entire team is responsible for quality in general. So in my latest article, How Wayfair Test Software, I describe the approach I have been following with my teams from catalog engineering. So you can easily find it on the internet. So in a nutshell, we do not have any embedded quality engineers within these Scrum teams. So zero, no quality engineers, no quality analysts. So we have one quality engineering team that empowers autonomous teams across our department to deliver value repeatedly, rapidly, and reliably. We build pipelines, frameworks, tools that allow our teams to do that. So we provide trainings to the teams on test automation and testing in general. So Wayfair is huge, so and not every single department and team follow this approach 100% because they have different scope and resources. So as I said, it depends. So for instance, if you work on the software for a nuclear power plant, most likely you will not be able to afford not having quality engineers embedded in immediate team, right? So it's different. It depends, but still testing is needed, and it doesn't matter who will be in charge of it.
Can't agree more than you on more than that. I think you touched it. What an example! A nuclear, plant. I think what would you do there unless humanize the whole thing? So that's how I call it: humanize the testing experience. And I firmly believe that there's nothing called manual because we are humans.
Right.
And what it's we who are going to automate as well. The bot is going to come unless I write a script. So it's as simple as that. Now let me move to Shilpi. What's your thoughts on this aspect? You believe where's the place for manual testing and where is automation heading, and how does it complement each other in the modern day software landscape?
So in my opinion, testing doesn't start when the piece comes from development team to QA world. Testing starts the day itself. There's an inception. The day we decide we want to build something. We need to gather the requirements. We need to analyze that. So there is no automation to help you in analyzing the requirements. It's like you have to manually sit together with your BA, with your dev to understand, and with the client to understand, or maybe the product team to understand what exactly we want to build, what should be the features, to interpret things rightly so that if there's a gap there, it's very costly to fix it later, right? So it's better to approach faster, review, give the feedback faster in the cycle. So one part that comes to the testing is reviewing and analyzing the requirements. So that's a manual effort that cannot be automated completely to give you the true aspect of things. Then it comes to doing the functional testing. Yes, I believe automation helps you a lot, and to help you do the regressive work quickly and without manual efforts. But to reach there, you need manual testing first. You need to walk through your application to understand how the user experience is going. I give you an example of a simple UI where you are just logging in. If the UI elements, the labels are not interpreted even enough, you won't use that application. I give you a login form where instead of email, I say name. You'll get confused, right? What name, username is it? What do I need to say there? So these labels, the kind of flow, the kind of experience, the engagement we are giving to the experience to the user throughout our application is something that cannot be judged by an audience. I agree that we have tools like Gelen that give you an ability to check the UI element placements, their font, their look and feel on different platforms. But still, that experience they cannot judge. You need to do it manually once, to putting yourself in the shoe of customer, like how many clicks it's taking to convert, how engaging the application is, how intuitive the labels are. You need a manual effort there.
Yeah.
I'm a believer that you can start writing tests even before the development is completed. So I generally ask my team to do the same, that get ready with your scenarios. But trust me, when you receive the developed piece and you manually do it, you unfold many scenarios that you cannot think ahead of the time. So there, the manual testing is where it's very important.
Absolutely. Thank you. I used to head a conversational AI platform before Innominds. So we sort of used to the platform used to allow a natural language engine based conversational AI bots that you could develop. How would you just test the human interaction there unless you have the visibility to know how the interaction is going to pan out? What I also call the experience testing. So there's a lot of scope there. Let me get with another question, get me back to Dawn. So, but then when do you choose to automate and when would you not?
I think you need to have a plan going in for how you're going to approach tools. So I built a heuristic when I was at Rational about just basic, not the kind of tools we have now, but just like record and playback tools, things that we're doing, automated regression testing, right? That in theory, here's how we used to describe that. It's an automated change detector. That's
right.
Not all it can do, right? It can't actually tell you what's wrong. It can just tell you that something is different. So it requires analysis. Now, what would make a target a good investment for automation? So Dorothy Graham talks about this in one of her books, but I built my own rule of thumb, and that is if you can't run the automation at least 5 times clean, meaning no maintenance, no effort, no babysitting, no revising, then it was not worth it. It was absolutely a waste of your time because you need to build the test the test, put the test into other things because it's rarely going to run in a completely isolated way. So make sure it works with everything else. Probably tweak the test, like maybe feed it data or have some decision-making ability in it. And so for each one of those things, you're going to have to test those things. So do it and run it, do it and run it, do it and run it. And how many, where is the tipping point? So if I've done that N number of times, whatever it's going to take to build the thing, I need to run it at least that many times plus 1 to get any value at all for automating something. And I think too often we automate stuff just because we have a tool. We automate stuff just because we can. And that rarely pays back and actually gives people a bad impression of what tools can do, especially in the management ranks who are paying the price for those tools and looking for some value. So that's what I used to share with my customers and teams.
I like that, plus 1. I really like that. Let me get back to Melissa. So Melissa, what's your view? When do you automate? When would you not? I mean, you put your step up and say, no, I'm not going to automate now.
So I manage services of incredible complexity. And so the more orders of magnitude of complexity you have, the more likely you run into a couple situations, one of which no individual human can keep the whole system in their head. Another of which is no human can possibly validate the whole thing in any kind of reasonable amount of time.
Correct.
So I automate any task that a machine is good at automating and a human would have to do multiple times. So my whole thing is modern software development, especially continuous integration and delivery. You absolutely cannot have continuous integration and delivery without automated testing, without ensuring that you are able to quickly detect regressions, right? Make sure you've captured in an automated, repeatable, quick way the current behavior. That you can detect, whoopsies, I have an unintended side effect. Because as you gain, when you're in a million lines of code across 50 services, unintended side effects are the name of the game. Whoops, I changed this one thing over here and somehow it touched this, it touched this, it touched this, and then we broke this, this other service over here. So automation is fantastic at capturing existing behavior to try to eliminate unintended side effects and accidental breakage. You have to have it. And so the manual checks are more for making sure that we did the right thing. Some things are hard to automate. Not all services are as easy to automate as others, right? If you have a legacy system, it can be very hard to impossible to automate. Right? I don't know how many times I've been at a conference running a workshop and somebody has said to me, the only thing I can write is Selenium automation. How do I make it faster and more reliable? My answer is, it is what it is. Like, you can't change the tool. So if that's the best you have, then that's the best you have. And so in that case, it may be appropriate that they have a lot of manual steps still, because they cannot make a tool be fast and repeatable, right? To Don's point, right, and to Dot's point, right? It has to be repeatable. It has to be very repeatable. My line is 99.9% reliable. If I don't have 99, 1 out of 1,000 false positives or negatives, if I don't have that, the tool is useless. I'm eroding trust in the tool. It's actually, I'd rather have no tool than have that tool.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to leave, manual testing for things that are not easily automated, that can't meet the reliability bar. Because if you say it's manually tested, people automatically understand, ooh, that's not fast. Right? Everybody understands the automated test may run 1,000 test cases in a second. My fingers don't run 1,000 test cases in a second.
Awesome. Let me move to Eugene. Eugene, your thoughts on that? I really like what you said, Melissa. It has to be reliable, robust, and secure. So as long as you're ensuring that, then you can make a choice. Eugene, what do you have to comment on this?
So yeah, at Wayfair, we automate only what is worthwhile. In other words, where return on investments is high, right? So we follow 4 don'ts. So number 1, do not automate flaky test cases. So if something is not well defined and you can't guarantee that that test will be stable, it is better to not automate it at all, to make your test suite stable and trustworthy. That's very important, because if you have one test sometimes failing and you just ignore it because there's sometimes this test fails when nothing is wrong, then soon you're gonna ignore real failures because you can't recognize and you can't remember which one is inconsistent one. So that's a very bad approach. So number 2, do not automate tests for features that are in the early stages and are expected to go through many changes. So for example, if we know that functionality is just a proof of concept, we just want to release it, gather some feedback information, then adjust it accordingly. So its temporary functionality is not worth automating. Number 3, do not automate tests for features that no one cares about, or features that are going to be deprecated soon. So why to bother, right? It's going away, no one cares about. Why to invest time in it? So in number 4, it's do not automate weird edge cases. You know what I mean? For example, if a bug is only caused by the unlikely behavior, for example, double clicking on the submit button, then clicking the back button 3 times in a row. So no, it's not worth your time to design, even to design an automated test for you. Yep, that's these rules we're following.
The 4 rules are really, really good, to be as a ready reckoner. Let me move to Shilpi on her perspectives on how does she approach the situation.
I completely agree to all 3 of the panelists who talked before me. I like to add few things to it. Like talking of experience, I once interviewed a test lead, and he came to me and said that, hey, I can guarantee you my test case will be 80% for positive, unfalse negative positive. For 20%, they can give you false negatives. Like that's how automation suite works. And I'm like, no, that's not the problem of the tool. That's the problem of the design. So when we design our automation, sure that we are getting them 100%, if not 100, then 99.9999% true positive or negative. If our tests are flaky, then they're good for nothing. The team will lose interest. Even I won't run them. I won't trust them. And I'm sure the devs will feel the same. So they're good for nothing. So in my opinion, we should automate everything that we want our application to be tested with, may it be edge, may it be positive, may it be negative, all the scenarios that we can think of. It's like one-time effort, you automate it, and it's running on every commit for you. So it reduces the turnaround time. You can actually say that, hey, things started failing after just particular commits, so that our analysis time, our troubleshooting reduces a lot. It's just that we need to take care of few things, like, for example, these days applications are integrating with CAPTCHA. So producing the right CAPTCHA is not my tool's work. I'm integrating with a third party. My work is that once you get the CAPTCHA logged in, you should be logged in and you should get a token and your session should intact. So I won't automate the CAPTCHA part of it. I won't automate saying that, hey, if you give in a question to us, search for bikes, and you click on bike, and then you should be able to log in. No, I'll do it manually, because automating that particular piece will take a lot of time, and that's not the core functionality that my application is providing. So that I'll keep manual, but the core functionalities I'll keep completely automated. Then the third part comes in how you maintain your archives. Every test needs a test input, and sometimes test outputs too. So if your logic change, your input-output combinations change, and generally output combinations changes, you need to maintain them. So how I approach this is that I have a test logic, a test algorithm in place to generate the test expectation so that outputs are limited to the extent that they are manageable. They are not giving you an overhead. Like, I'm coming from banking and financial domain, so it's like one combination one journey is like you have a loan for 12 months or a auto insurance running for 12 months. So you have statements, payments, everything happening, renewals, and so many combinations coming in. Like, for every scenario, I have thousands of fields to validate. I can not practically keep that test output archive for all my thousands of cases, like 1,000 cross 1,000. It's like too much to maintain. So I approach in a different way, that I create a test logic to get those expectations calculated instead of archiving, so that maintenance cost reduces, and still we are automating, and we are having a quick turnaround time. Like in 20 minutes or so, you are like running thousands of cases, which manually you cannot.
Excellent. These were like well-rounded insights. In the meanwhile, I would suggest our audience, if they have questions, they can start typing in the Q&A window. We would be glad to answer a few of them. Let me get back. So assuming you have to test a voice bot, an Alexa application, or a driverless car, or a digital medtech device, a color sensing real-time scanning application, a nuclear reactor, nuclear plant that Eugene spoke about, how do you go about it? What parts of that you decide as part of your automation strategy? Now, where I'm heading is, are there any practical case studies that you can have where you can share where your functional and non-functional test automation was supplemented with experience testing and manual testing? So I'm throwing it open for all of you. You could take turns to talk about. Let me open it up with Don now on that one.
So I've worked on some projects where people were faced with that sort of decision. Some safety critical, some not, just complex, just infinitely complex. And as Evgeny was talking about before, if there isn't a stable target, then it's probably too soon to automate. So if the technology is baked, right, then you can implement some automation and, you know, potentially use that as a change detector, right, as your tool for other things. But if it's not stable yet, and if you're still designing and engineering the system to do the thing, how are you going to design and engineer the automation to do the thing that isn't there yet? It's just like, I find it difficult to build the tool that will be suited to that. So when there are targets, when there are outcomes that can be predicted and assumed to be good, I would like to supplement, you know, probably at a lower level, all the other testing and investigation and assessment that we're doing with automation, if we can, if we have confidence in it. If we don't have confidence in it, we could use things like Chaos Monkey and other, you know, fault injection kind of tools to just knock on the thing and see what happens. And to give you some idea, when I worked for the OCR company, this was a wholly owned subsidiary of Xerox. We did 8 weeks of automated regression testing anytime we made a change. And 8 weeks, meaning our tests ran 24/7 on Unix boxes for 8 weeks, because we OCR'd into 14 languages. So one little change to one font, one text style, whatever, could literally blow up Swedish. Like you really don't know what's going to happen. So you could get the automation to run the tests, but the analysis of what was good or bad still had to be evaluated by a human. So let's just call that tool assisted. Does that make sense? In a scenario like that, use the tool for what it can do, but don't let it do too much. Don't let it snow you. and give you a full sense of confidence. I think that's the most dangerous, especially in a safety critical space. Right?
Great. That's what I was telling at the beginning. It has to be assistive. Otherwise, it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Right. Let me move to Melissa. From your experience of applications, real-time testing that you were speaking about, what are your insights on this one?
Yeah, so I've run a lot of services. One I think I mentioned in the beginning was Cortana. I was on the Cortana launch team. So I have some pretty direct experience with how do you the iteration one of this very complex chatbot. And with anything else, right, it involves breaking up the complex system into testable components, right? Because the chat part of it is actually many different pieces. One part is streaming WebSockets. One part is conversational understanding. One part is intent, right? And of intent, then there is keyword breaking, and of keyword breaking, there's keyword matching, and so it gets quite complicated when you break the pieces apart. And so what we did was we tested pieces in isolation as much as possible, right? Because your WebSocket system doesn't actually care what's going across the top of it. Your conversational intent is just text in and text out. Your machine learning models can be trained totally in isolation from the fact that it's speech bytes going over a WebSocket. And so by breaking all of the pieces apart such that you don't have to test end to end, because that's an impossible task. You cannot reliably test that whole thing end to end and explore every possible failure case and input and output. There's no way. It's not right. It's an exponential explosion problem. So the way we test it is we break up the pieces, right? We can absolutely test the WebSocket handling really well with automation. One or two tests. You can absolutely test each piece, starting at the unit level up, right? You can test them pretty fully until you have a pretty good confidence in your coverage. And then once you're stitching the pieces together, you don't need a comprehensive full error case end-to-end suite. Maybe you need one or two, right? And those are just your canaries. They're just there to make sure the interfaces haven't changed in a way that prohibits communication. And then you rely on every individual piece to report its own health and status and to police itself. Because you just can't manage that whole complexity, and then it's impossible. There's too many humans involved, too many services, too many millions of ways that things can fail.
Brilliant. I think that's as real time as it could get if you're talking about a Cortana experience. Let me quickly move to Eugene and followed by Shilpi, and then we could go for audience questions. There's some good questions pouring in. Eugene, your thoughts on what we just discussed?
Right. Yep. Sounds good. So, do we need to automate testing for these kinds of apps, Alexa or AI-driven? Of course, yes, definitely, by all means. You just could not afford not doing that, right? So, there are a bunch of libraries and approaches that could help to efficiently automate the testing for these apps. Do we still have to have some manual testing? Yes, definitely, by all means, right? Test automation frees us from a routine, right, of doing repetitive tasks, so we could focus on other activities, requirements analysis, exploratory testing, conducting of usability and user acceptance tests, and that kind of stuff, right? Should it be done by a dedicated QA person or by any other team member? It's a different question again. It depends on many aspects of available resources. So to summarize, manual testing should complement automated testing in every single area.
Brilliant. Thank you. Shilpi?
So I like to state two practical real-life examples to answer the question. So the first one is that in my prior organization, we were building an insurance product that was an auto insurance policy product where we were giving you discounts on your premium based on how well you are driving. So to achieve that, we were collecting telematics score whenever you are driving. Just have our app opened up in the background in your phone, and we'll collect the telematics data, and we'll do some data science on that, and based on that we'll decide, oh, you are a very good driver, we'll give you discount, maybe 25%, maybe 15%, based on how well you drive. Now to test this, I have a data science team working on the algorithm, data engineer team working on different fuzzy logic combinations to validate the data science algorithm is working fine and everything. I really need that because practically I cannot make that all the combinations every time a dev is committing any change. I cannot practically go on a drive and do everything, every possible combination, like jumping the red light, or maybe I'll get fines more than my salary. So that's not possible, right? So I need that logic in place, the automation in place. But still, does it suffice? No. I can test that algorithm is working fine. I can test the integration points are working fine, but I cannot test that end-to-end flow is working fine. The experience is working fine. The delays there is no delay. The application is capturing the right data at right point, at right time and point. So these things, I actually had to have some live trips with the app in hand and do some fuzzy testing there before certifying anything for production release. So places like that, I cannot ditch manual testing. Like, I have to have it. But yes, automation makes my life very much easier. Out of 1,000 scenarios, I just have to maybe do 2-3 scenarios manually to ensure that things are in place. The second example, I'll talk about a driverless car. So I am a robotics fan too. So part-time, I work on robotic projects, like just for fun. So I developed a driverless car prototype for myself. So I was using digital image processing and radar sensors to achieve that. Now, being a QA, I wanted to test it too, very good. So I started writing tests for it. I could test the digital image algorithm without any manual intervention. I could test the integration with digital camera, with sensors, like the data is coming in, it's right, it's giving me the right data. But is the integration working fine? When the car is moving, is the sensor giving me the right data at the right time? Is it able to capture the right images? No, I cannot automate it. I'll have to make the car drive to get that kind of confidence. So that's the need of manual that we cannot overlook any day in our life.
Excellent.
Other than that, I like to share that I believe that we need not to wait for things to get stable to start automation. Like, I don't want the complete end-to-end product to be in place to start automation, because otherwise it will be too late in the picture.
Yeah.
I see team negotiating that, hey, we'll start when developer says it's done. But I believe, no, you started the time developer is starting writing it. So that by the time it's dev done, it should be QA automation suite should be ready, and you can fire things right away and get the feedback quickly. So that's how we manage things better, so that you don't feel that overhead of automation writing part in place, so that things get don't get delayed with the automation part.
Terrific. Great. I think we will take some audience questions, but before I go there, so what I hear is humanize the testing experience. I think that's the fundamental thing, and automate early, automate when it is required, and manual testing is not dead, right? So let me get back to some questions, very interesting questions. I have one from Yana. As testing experts, we understand the dangers of automating all the things. What recommendations do you have to influence the leadership and executives that think automation is equal to testing, testing is equal to quality, and quality is equal to fast? A good question. I think all of you could opine, or any one of you can talk about it. Maybe Dawn, you might want to take this.
This is a very common thing that comes up for me in training classes. Because as people are learning more about the various facets of testing, right? Testing is not just do this at the end, like Shilpi was saying. That's too narrow. The notion that we would automate everything is too narrow. But I think of it like this. We are typically building software for humans, for people, to support people in something. And to dehumanize the thing that we have built for humans seems like a bit of an oxymoron. Like, I don't exactly want to do that.
Right.
There needs to be that assessment. And I've worked on projects where the team fully invested in, we're going to automate everything to our own detriment, by the way, shipping products that literally were broken on impact, like couldn't be used day one out of the box, which is just embarrassing. And how do you miss something like that? When you think about that, is because you had nobody evaluating it. So how do you fight the pressure? Because how this happened at Rational was our QA director was a previous developer. All our product managers for the testing products were previous developers.
Yeah.
Our business unit manager, the bum, was a previous developer of Rational Rose, a development tool. And so there was all of this pressure from everyone. We can automate everything. Of course we can. There's no question in any of their minds. And we again and again made the mistake of over relying on it. So I would try to communicate to managers, could be executives, could be team members, could, there's a lot of different audiences to influence. Sometimes it's other testers, right? Sometimes it's people who have been automation engineers, right? From the ground up. And I think it's important to find a test scenario or a bug or some quality factor we would want to evaluate that cannot be done with automation. Just find that. Just find one example and build on it. And maybe it was the last disaster that you had, so save those, not to beat people up and feel bad about it, but instead to learn from it and use real information, not imagine things. We're all good at imagining what could go wrong. Let's talk about what actually has gone wrong and the method by which we missed it. And often it's a little too much overconfidence in automation at every stage. So someone had a question about TDD. So it doesn't matter whether this is development, integration, end-to-end, performance, security. It does not matter what facet. There's a place for automation to assist, but not take over, in my opinion.
Absolutely. The word assist keep coming back, and never have overconfidence in your automation. I think that's two summary items. Let me move to Melissa. Here's a question. Maybe I'm putting it, how can we trust a tester's code in terms of automation when one needs to write test what a developer coded is right or wrong? Some perspective.
So there's a couple of interesting things to unpack here. So one, it implies that you have a separate person doing the testing from the person who wrote the code. That's not always true, but it's in the conflict. Right? I've written test code for a developer's code, and I've made some assumptions that are different from the ones the developer made, and then the automation fails, and then we have to have a conversation about whose understanding is correct. This is what I was talking about, bugs of implementation over bugs of understanding. So it's in the interaction of the code and the test. We need each other to peer review our tests, just like we peer review code. You would never ship code to production without a review. You would never ship a test to production without a review. To make sure that the inherent conflict of here's what I'm checking, that my approach is correct, and that I would find, that it could ever fail, right? If a test case can never fail, it's not a useful test case. And so the trust is built just like we would for any other service. You have metrics to make sure the test is reliable. You have a review to make sure the test is covering what it should be covered. And then, of course, you have the interaction of the test and the code under test to ensure that the right thing is going to happen there.
Awesome. Very nice. Let me go to Shilpi. Maybe I think you could comment about it, and then I'll have one for Eugene as well. What are your thoughts on automating end-to-end, tightly coupled business operation flows across different business applications, ERP, CRMs, banking applications from different vendors?
So how I approach is like automating all the integration points for all the kind of data that can be transferred and the interpretation of that data, like what I'm sending is interpreted rightly or not, is the system is breaking or not, for different combinations happening. And then checking the flows of things, like how the data is flowing from one integration point to other, and then checking the end till the end for everything, that hey, end-to-end things should be as expected. Now there comes different part to it, like it's not only functional testing, it's more about integration testing, about checking the system reliability. If one of the integration point goes down, then how you'll treat that, what do you expect to happen, will your data cache, or things like that. That's more important in these type of scenarios. It's rather than anything else. And then it's more about the flow of the things for an end user. What's the experience is, how how much you are able to get the end user engaged in that flow. Like if maybe I'm interacting with 3 parties, and after you have a UI experience and you send things and it's taking a minute to come back, I'm not sure the customer will stay on the page, he'll run away. So like if you can give, but if you need that 1 minute, you need to engage that customer somehow to make him wait and stay there. If you'll just keep on loading, showing a loader icon for a minute, no, it's not engaging. Maybe you can show the partial data, maybe you can show some partial results, so that he can start looking at things and can wait for that time to get everything in place. So these kind of things are which as a manual view I'll take care of. And then we'll have the things like ensuring that the person who's developing is not the one who's writing the test, so that we get the different perspective, as Melissa discussed. Like you make assumptions when things comes to it's natural, it's like human nature. But if different people are writing tests rather than code, may it be dev or QA, that doesn't matter, but a different person is writing, they make different assumptions, they interpret things differently. So we open the floor for different type of combinations, different kind of discussions, like are we expecting this integration party to behave like that in this particular scenario? Is the integration point accepting the right things, showing the right output? So these questions come in when different people are involved.
Awesome. Very good. Let me go back to Eugene. Maybe this could be the last question we can take. Why do you think all of us talk around test automation is limited to test procedures? What about test data generation, result collation, report visualization, etc.? Asks Brijesh. Over to you, Eugene. You want to give some thoughts around it?
Yeah, that's actually a good point. I mean, it's important to visualize what we're working on, and to have involvement from our product managers and from business to test automation. And it will be we will be able to achieve it only by using some reporting, some environment and infrastructure around the test automation. So again, test automation is not a silver bullet for everything. So keep in mind that the fact that you have, for example, 1,000 automated tests means nothing if those automated tests do not validate what is really needed, right? You will never reach success with test automation if you are not good at manual testing, and if you don't have appropriate tools for your test automation, for test data generation, for reporting purposes, and also on that note, not having an understanding of what you should test or how you should test it. I mean, how to prepare the data for your automated scripts. So if you don't have this understanding, that you will never succeed in the test automation. So again, how to put it mildly, if you automate crap, it will be nothing but automated crap, right? So you got to manage it properly. So yeah, that's important thing that we will need to think. We will have to see this big picture: how we generate the data, how we provide it to our test automation, how we generate the results, and how we visualize the results. That's a good thing.
Automate the crap. I like that. Garbage in will be garbage out.
Correct.
So I think we've had a phenomenal discussion. I must say we are absolutely bang on time. We are a minute away. But let me sort of summarize the whole experience today. So my understanding, manual testing is not dead. It's not going anywhere. Automate, you need to, but then figure out where you need to draw a line. But the way the whole testing is evolved and is evolving is drastically different, considering the type of applications that we have to interact on a daily basis. So hence, while automation is the order of the day, it's not the solution for everything. And humanize the testing experience, you would come out with a better experience and better customers. I think that's what I would summarize. And I must congratulate TestFest for putting together a stellar show. It's been an awesome panel hosting all of you. Thank you, John, Eugene, Melissa, and Shilpi for your rich insights, and my wonderful audience for those beautiful, insightful questions. And I loved it. Thank you so much, and we look forward for many editions. I see Don doing a namaste, so let me do the same from India. Namaste. Right. Thank you so much. We will look forward for the next set of sessions. Over to you, Saurabh and Sneha. Thank you.
Good luck.
Bye. Stay safe, guys, everyone.